Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I hear you are in my hometown of Washington, D.C. You guys are playing the Mystics tomorrow night?
Yes, we are. We just got here like an hour ago, so we play them tomorrow. We just played yesterday, so it's a quick turnaround.
That is a quick turnaround. You guys were in Atlanta yesterday, if I'm not mistaken?
We were at home, but we played Atlanta.
Oh, you played Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of travel for you then.
Yeah. Coming up our next couple games, we have on the road quite a bit, so
It's
just to
probably a
stretch
lot
how
of,
it turns out, yeah.
yeah, very different from last season when you guys were in the
Where
bubble
there's
the
zero
entire
travel,
time.
right?
Right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we are grateful for your time. And speaking of hometowns, I actually kind of want to start our conversation off there. Your hometown is in Missouri, and you
Yes.
have spoken before, and I've listened to you on podcasts and read some pieces. It's not that far from Ferguson. Obviously, everything that happened with Michael Brown, and he was shot and killed, that was your senior year of high school. And you've spoken a lot about how defining that was for you. You also grew up in a biracial family. I want to ask you, as we're talking about, diversity and a united front and athletes using their platforms, how did all of that impact the way you initially viewed your platform, or if that was even a word that was kind of on your radar when you first went to UConn and then eventually entered the league?
Yeah, so it did happen my senior year of high school, and at that point, it was kind of because it was so close. I mean, it was so close to my school that we had to not come to school for a couple days because of like the riots and things like that. It was just too close, and that was kind of the first time that something like that has personally impacted me, and the first time I was so close to something like that happening. So it was really eye opening. You hear about it on the news and things like that, but it had never, like I said, affected me personally in my life. So it really made me start paying attention more than I had before. And at that point, I didn't really have like a platform. I know high schoolers today that have like, hundreds of thousands of followers, but even, a couple years ago when I was in high school, it wasn't like that yet. So it's not necessarily something I thought about in that way, but definitely once I got to UConn, and, we were reporters were talking to us a lot more, and your following grows on Instagram and other social platforms. You kind of see that you have a voice and people are listening to what you're saying, so you can take advantage of it a little bit more.
And flash forward, you've now been playing in Minnesota for the last 3 years now. Given everything that has happened there over the last 12 plus months now, I guess, since George Floyd, we saw so many stories and posts about players throughout the league protesting and speaking up, or even sitting out in the case of players like Renee Montgomery. But what did you feel in Minnesota with your community at the center of all of this?
Definitely a lot of hurt. I wasn't in market because of COVID. We came really late to the season, so I wasn't in Minnesota when it happened. But we had a bunch of team meetings about it. You obviously felt the hurt nationwide, worldwide about what was happening. And we actually had the opportunity to speak to the chief of police in Minnesota. So we kind of got to ask him questions like, why is this happening? How are we going to prevent this in the future? And it was, really nice for us to be able to talk to someone in charge, someone who's so close, to ask them and have them answer the questions that we had, because it was just, obviously such a heartbreaking thing to happen. And it was so disgusting to watch. So, especially being in Minnesota, I think we wanted to do anything that we could to, use our voices to speak out and to bring awareness, or to help make a change in any way that we could.
Where do you even start with those conversations, and talking about how to bring those injustices and inequities kind of to the forefront of culture, where sports is plays such a prominent role?
So when it first happened, we were really just getting our feelings out, like how it made us feel, how it was impacting us. And then it kind of turned into, okay, what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And that's where the conversations, like with the chief of police came in. We were asking him what we could do. And in a way, it was almost disheartening, because basically he was saying, in order for this to change, you have to change laws. So writing your local senators or things like that. So it didn't feel like a lot that we could do, when we initially talked to him. And then the league got together and we said, what can we do as a whole? Because as we were talking about before, we know that we have big platforms and we can use our voices to do that. So that's where we came up with the Say Her Name and the vote initiative that we were doing, and really made our season about that so we could bring as much awareness as we could.
I will just say I have always been a huge WNBA stan because of, in part, the way that they've always promoted diversity and inclusion and equity in the league and supporting their players of all different backgrounds and gender identities and sexual orientations and races. And, they have always made that kind of a prominent part of the league and their identity. But especially last year, we saw that. And we saw that kind of support from the league. Do you feel like the way that they empowered athlete voices allowed you guys to kind of speak even louder? Or do you feel like it was sort of like a reciprocal cycle there?
I definitely think that the league does a great job of listening to us and what we want to do. I know not everyone has that with their jobs. So I felt really lucky to be a part of a league who heard our concerns and wanted to do everything in their power to help us reach the goals that we had. So it's definitely nice from that standpoint. And just being surrounded by such powerful women who weren't going to take no for an answer and were going to do this any way that they could. It was such a powerful season. And obviously it's, I hate that it had to be this thing that we were advocating so hard for. I wish that this wasn't something that we had to push on. But at the same time, I felt, so honored to be a part of such a strong organization and such a strong league of women who will use their voices for whatever they think is right.
It's really fascinating to watch from the outside, not only as a reporter, but also as kind of a viewer, to see this concept of athlete activism and like athlete empowerment that's kind of been like gaining steam over the last couple years, like really take on a whole new form. And it wasn't just with issues of social injustice. The league was, tackling issues of, in terms of promoting politicians, or promoting is probably the wrong word, but supporting and backing politicians who align with the values of, the players and what they wanted to see. What was it like to be part of that on the ground there?
It was so empowering. I mean, to see that if we had any, even a small impact on what was happening. I mean, obviously it started with social injustice, our league, and then we honed in on voting because voting is the fastest way to make a change. And so with, Senator Warnock, seeing that happen in Georgia was just seeing it come to fruition and him winning. I mean, it was everything that we could have hoped for the season.
It kind of goes back to bring it full circle to what you were saying about talking to the chief of police in Minneapolis about what you can do, right? And him talking about writing to your representatives in government and, needing laws to be changed and whatnot. It feels like voting is kind of a natural fit to follow through with that.
Absolutely. It's like he said right, and we're like, we'll do you one better. We'll promote him the whole season and get him hopefully elected.
Right. You're like, we'll write, we'll make awesome t-shirts, we will post on Instagram, we will make sure it is everywhere.
Yes.
Did you ever think that a group of such diverse players could come together around one cause, not even one cause, multiple causes last season in the way that you guys did in the W?
So it's never something that even crossed my mind, honestly, for us to do that. But when it did happen, like I said, it was so empowering to see the change and the impact that we could have with our united voices. And I think being in the bubble allowed us to really, make that happen tenfold because we were all together. Usually you have, two representatives from each team and they kind of make up like the council.
Right.
But because we were all together, we were able to come into a room and all 144 of us talk about issues and work through things. And like I said, it was so powerful that we were able to do that. And it was just kind of a once in a lifetime, opportunity that we had to really make the biggest impact that we could have.
I just got goosebumps, like thinking about all of you sitting in a room together, having these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be a fly on the wall and just listen to all of those powerful voices and all of those awesome women. Just really
it was really cool to do that. I mean, obviously, like I said, the circumstances are not what you'd want, but to have us all come together and to hear everyone's opinion, because again, you don't always get to do that. We're in 12 different states doing this usually. So to have us all together, you can hear firsthand what people are saying, what they think that we should do, and having arguments and talking through it and coming to a solid conclusion at the end. It was like I said, something I'll never forget.
I bet. Is there anything, not all athletes, I imagine, would say that they've had the same experience in terms of their league giving them the opportunity or the platform to do that. Are there any lessons in particular you think that other leagues or organizations can take from what you guys have started to really kind of expedite in the WNBA?
I think definitely listening to the players. I mean, you wouldn't have a league without the players, so you want to hear their concerns and help them in any way that you can, especially for something that's this important. I think, the league did everything right and hearing our concerns and helping us to achieve whatever goal that we had set out to do last year.
So where do you guys go next? That's the question. What is kind of the next big goal or the next obstacle to tackle?
So something that we really wanted to make a point was that last year wasn't the only year that we were going to do this. So we're continuing to fight for social justice, and we're doing things throughout the year and the season. We have like Black Lives Matter on the court, so you can see that every game. And there's like a video that we play every game, and just things like that where we're continuing to push so it's not forgotten and it's not just something that we did for 1 year.
I know the W does a lot of pipeline kind of stuff too, and is trying to work with, getting more girls involved in the sport and involved in sports more generally, kind of at the local level and in different team markets and whatnot. How do you guys take this message and show this diverse league of successful women and try to kind of pass that on to the next generation?
I think, just trying to get involved in our communities as much as we can, because we understand how important it is for girls to have role models and for them to be staying in sports, because, we were there at one point, obviously. And, I think that's one of my favorite things about being an athlete is knowing that there's, little girls looking up to us, because how important that can be. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of basketball female athletes. The league was just starting out, but you see, men on the TV all the time, whatever sport it was. So for us to be more visible, getting involved with them, I think is just the most important thing, because I know how much of an impact it could have on them.
I feel like visibility has been such a big focus for a lot of women's sports leagues this year. And just like you said, just right, like you can't be what you can't see is what they always say. And so
Exactly.
On a personal level, I'm a huge advocate of that. But also as someone who covers the women's game and the women's sports, it's really cool to see other people starting to kind of rally around that and realize the quality of not only the sport and the actual games that are happening, but the people behind it and the things that you guys are doing off the court. So here's to hoping for more of that, and here's to hoping to more of an impact.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. And I'm going to say best of luck tomorrow, but you are playing my hometown team, so I will have to be ready for both of you.
I'll take it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.